gonna get my shout back. I'm gonna get my laugh back. Get it all back. You've come too far to give up now. God will turn it all around and turn it all around for you. So turn your frown into a smile. God will turn it all around and turn it all around.
Good morning, good morning. We just want to welcome everyone onto the airways. My name is Minister Arnold Jolivet II, and I'm excited to be here with you all this morning. We have an action-packed, a power-packed show, but the first thing we want to do, as we do always, is we want to actually turn over the airways to our God. We pray that He would have His way on this hour that we are blessed to be with you today. We have some awesome participants here in the studio with us today. We're going to have some great conversation. We're going to take some calls, and we're going to magnify and glorify our God while we're here on the air. So again, I'd like to welcome one of our co-hosts, the good Dr. Harold Dobson. Welcome. Good morning. How you doing there, Dr. Dobson?
Good morning.
Good to see you. Always a pleasure. And we have a guest co-host in the studio today. I'm ecstatic to have this man of God into the studio today. He is a father. He's a son. He's a brother. He's an author. He's just a mighty man of God. I'm pleased to know him for over 20 years, and he's a very good and close friend of mine, and we're here today to talk a little bit about what's going on and how God is absolutely moved in his life and all the great things that he is doing to magnify the kingdom, and that is Darius Gourdin. Darius, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me, man.
Well, we're awesome. We're honored to have you on today, and what we want to do briefly is talk a little bit about your book. We know you have a book out now that's called Conversations of the Crucifixion. Mm-hmm. And that book has truly blessed me. I've had an opportunity to read it and to really get into it. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to write the book?
Sure. I attend Evangel Cathedral up in Marlboro, Maryland. And one of the elders of the church gave me a call. He knows that I'm a writer. And he said he had an idea to do a sermon illustrated on stage where some of the items that were used in the crucifixion of Jesus were talking about him. So we did the cross and the hammer, the nails, the whip, and they were all giving their impression of interacting with Jesus. And so I wrote the play, and we did it on Palm Sunday, 2011. And it was very powerful. Had a huge altar call. People were really into it and everything, and just a different perspective of the crucifixion. We all know the story of the crucifixion, whether you believe it or not, you know the story. But this is the cross talking about it. This is the cross saying, I was once a symbol of death. When people saw the cross, they knew what the deal was. Mm-hmm. Nobody lives through a cross. Mm-hmm. And now Christians wear crosses around their necks as jewelry. It's a symbol of life. Mm-hmm. And Jesus was the person that changed the cross. So I wrote the whole thing out, and it was really well received. So I go back home, maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, I'm in prayer, and I felt the Lord leading me to turn that play into a book. And I knew that if I had to do that, I had to add more things, because we only did 6 things in the play. So I began adding, the palm branch and the tomb and the angel at the tomb. And then I began to add people, Peter and Judas. Judas turned him in. He was once a faithful follower, but then he turned him in. So Thomas, who doubted him, and the 2 men on the road to Emmaus that walked with him, didn't even know who he was. So I began to add all these things, and each one of these things is given their own perspective of interacting with Jesus during that week. And I was adding stuff, writing. And when I finally finished, I had 30 different chapters in the book. And it took 3 years to do. Mm-hmm. And I finished it about Easter time this year. Mm-hmm. So now the book is out, and it's been pretty well received so far.
Well, let me ask you this, Darius, because I found in my experience that a lot of people are intimidated by the Bible. Just simply because it's so vast and there's so much information. Mm-hmm. And one thing that really helped me is being able to relate to the people in the Bible as real live people.
Right.
People who had faults. Right. Just like I have faults. Mm-hmm. Noah, you have Paul and Saul and so many different characters. What was your mindset? How were you able to bring these characters to life as you did in the book? What were you thinking about as you did that? And how can your book, for someone who is not familiar with the Bible, some people aren't even familiar with the entire story of the crucifixion or what took place. Is this for someone who is an experienced Bible scholar, or can someone who is a novice that doesn't really know a lot about the people in the Bible and what took place? Can both people relate to it?
Both would be able to appreciate it. I don't go too deep into the theology of the thing. I try to make it understandable. And in all my writing, I'm a storyteller. And so I try to get into the head of the character. If you follow my work, I've done a lot of work with the Greek culture, the fraternities and sororities, and I do a lot of writing for that. My first book was based on the fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, which we're both members. And I did the founders, and I tried to get into their heads and what they were thinking back 100 years ago. So with this book, it's the same theme in that if I was Judas, something led me to leave my occupation and follow this guy. I mean, this guy, he must have been magnetic. He must have been charismatic. He must have been a great speaker or a great motivational speaker or something. But what made me leave what I'm doing, leave my wife, my family, whatever I had going on, I left it to follow him. And at some point along the next 3 years, something changed my opinion to the point that I turned him in.
Wow.
Now, I wanted to get into Judas's head. Like, what could he have been thinking? If that were me, what reason would I have to turn him in? And so every character in the book or every item that's in the book, I try to see if this were me, how would I approach this situation? If I was, the palm branch, how would I be waved at him? If I was this, if I was that, if I was the other, how would I be able to interact with him if I knew who he was or if I didn't know who he was, in either case. And so I try to take my time and get into these different characters. When I did the two men on the cross, the two thieves, they're in the book. But I told their story, one guy has one perspective, the other guy has another perspective. And so I said to myself, if I was a Jewish person, if I was a thief and I got arrested, how would I see this guy who's also being crucified on the same day that I'm being crucified?
Wow.
And so I went into the culture of Judaism and what it meant to be a thief and how they viewed that kind of a person. And I tried to write from that perspective if it were me.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this. What type of feedback have you gotten from those who have read the book? I know you've done some Bible studies on the actual book. What type of feedback or response have you gotten?
It's been extremely positive. People are enjoying it. I think that what they like about it is it's a different perspective on the story. When you look at the Crown of Thorns, when he speaks in the book, it's saying, I'm seeing his thoughts. Like I'm in his head. So as he's going through the process of going up the road to be crucified, I see what he's thinking about. Who would have ever thought of that? You know what I mean? It's a different way to look at it. We all know the Crown of Thorns from the outside, but who's thinking of what he's thinking of from the inside? So people that are reading it are saying, wow, I like the fact that, this is a whole different look and a different appreciation for Jesus and for what he did. I like the fact that it's a simple book. It's not too heavy. It's 30 chapters, but some of them are 3, 4, 5 pages. It isn't like it's 100 pages per chapter. So you can really get into it. You can jump in. You can recognize who these characters are, who Thomas was. Thomas also followed him, but then he fell into doubt. Why did he doubt the way that he did? And so there are some things in there that I feel like people can relate to. And when they read it, they send me messages on Facebook, or they'll tweet me, or they'll call me, or they'll say, hey, man, I really enjoyed it because I can relate to this.
That's incredible. But let me ask you this, because so many people, you mentioned that you've authored other books, and so many people say that they're working on a book, or I'm about to write a book, or I'm thinking about doing a book. And I know that for you to be an author of multiple books, that there had to have been some challenges in taking the conception from your mind to actually putting it on paper and seeing it come to fruition. What were some of the challenges that I know as we talk on the airwaves, there are people who are listening right now who may have an idea, who may have a concept in their mind, but they simply can't birth it. What would you say to those people, and what were some of the challenges that you faced in getting your ideas out and really becoming a reality?
The biggest challenge that I face, and I speak to a lot of people who are potential authors, who have an idea, who have a book concept, the biggest thing is fear and self-doubt. That is I hear it over and over and over again. And what happens is, God might give you an idea, and you'll be excited because it's a great idea. God gave it to you. It's a good idea. And it's something that you could write, you could sell it, you can market it, whatever the case. And you're excited out the gate. You're excited at first. And you begin writing your ideas down and you're putting it together. And then you start getting the idea, well, you know what? I didn't go to school for this. My major isn't in journalism, or I'm not a broadcast journalism, or I don't know how to do this thing. Who's going to buy my book? How am I going to afford to get it printed? And all these questions are going to come in your mind. That's how the process works. The enemy comes in and he sows a little seed of doubt, a little seed of fear. And what happens is you have to go back to what God said. What did God say to you in the very beginning? And because I've done multiple books, I still face it. I still face the same challenges that I did when I first did a first book. And that was, can I really do this? Who's going to buy this book? Can I afford to do this? Do I have the grammar correct? Am I a good writer? You face all these things and go back to what God said. If God gave you an idea, God gave you a concept, you roll with it. He's not going to leave you out there hanging. He wouldn't give you an idea and say, okay, you're on your own now.
Right. He's
going to say, here's your idea, and I'm going to open this door over here, walk through it. Then I'm going to open that door over there, walk through it. And as you walk through these doors, you'll find the resources you need and everything.
Wow. And that's one thing that we talk